Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem, B'Shem Eden Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Yirkab Smith on issur Kallala La'ar halachic. We're sponsoring a shir called Eden Shir at 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com. I'd like to give a big kerachter of Simcha Cohen for partially sponsoring today's shir. With Nishmas Imoy, Rezel Basov, Nachum Alevi, Shalom Yotza Beis Shvat, and Nishmas Tzur B'Tzara Chaim. Rav Smith.
I recently overheard two people talking, and one said to the other about one of the politicians, Yamach Shemai. That was a Yid, and I was shocked. We don't usually say Yamach Shemai and a Yid. And then I started realizing that this shir for today is long overdue. We hear the concept of issur Kallala, we think about Bilam and wicked people. But as we'll see today, that the concept of a Kallala, issur Kallala, is unfortunately much more negated than we realize. Besides the fact that the Chinuch makes a cheshbon, there are 5 issurei Torah associated with the issur Kallala. In Mitzvah Samach Tes, he speaks about cursing a dayan. In Mitzvah Ayin, Berchas Hashem. In Mitzvah Ayin Aleph, cursing a nasi. Reish Lamed Aleph, cursing any person. And Reish Samach, we find a few places in the Torah, the issur of Makal Av Imai, which is Chayiv Misas Bezdin. Imagine there are 5 issurei Torah with Kallala, 2 of them are Chayiv Misas Bezdin. And there's well over 50 Gemaras, and that's not a Guzma, well over 50 Gemaras that we find the concept of Kallalas where they did curse and not let it curse. But suffice to quote the words of the Heilige Shlach Kodesh in Shar Oisius, Yan ki harbe v'harbe einam nivzorim bezeh al kain basi bazar gedayla. So the Shlach felt it important to talk in his times, how much more today. It's noteworthy. The Goyin wrote in the famous Igeres, he wrote to his family before he left Eretz Yisrael. And he writes, and I quote, Ala klala ushvu v'chazov taka oisam. Hit the children v'lo yisracham aleim klal. When it comes to chinuch, and he picks, of all examples he picks, don't make sure you mechanech them about the issur Kallala. The guy had heilige kinder, but obviously Kallala is much more negei alamaisa. Rabbeinu Yoina in the Geras HaTshuva and Ois Tes, zois achas men haverais hachamuras b'Torah. Now ni long enough, we don't ever try to make new isurim and make tzaros of Eden and create isurim. But here we're going to learn the sugya. It's a beautiful sugya, very much hands-on, like every other sugya. And as we'll see, we'll try Be'ez Hashem, like we always try to do, to find one yisoid, and then we'll say Zilba Sataima. The whole sugya really flows from one simple yisoid. This is clear that the main source of the issur Kallala for a regular person is the pasuk in Parash Kedoshim, L'sakal al-cheirish, don't curse a deaf person. Of course, Rashi quotes the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it's lav dafka cheirish, not allowed to curse anybody. Now, why do I say the main source? Because in Parash Mishpatim, Elikim lo yisakal v'nasi v'amcha lo yisa'ar, there we see the issur of Berchas Hashem, that's fakert, of course, of Chas Hashem Klus Hashem, cursing a nasi or a dayan. But basically, today we're going to focus on the issur of cursing another yid, and of course the sugya of Makal Av Imai is a sugya for itself. And I'll mention it once and for all that besides cursing, but of course if someone cursed someone else, he's violating Achbeach Kamoicha and the Leisainu Ishas Hamisai and Leisisachich Bavavecha. But today we're just going to focus on the issur of Kallala, not about dayanim or parents. Simple issur of Kallala is certainly a share for itself. Now here's the big question. Because a person is inclined to say, "Vos geit dich on what he said?" Like, what do you care? Why does the Torah care? Let him curse. In America they say talk is cheap and it's harmless talk. Like, why is the Torah so makbid 5 issurei Torah? And the kasha is stronger. If you remember the Gemara in Makis Yud Aleph, where the mothers of the Kahana would have to daven that the people in the Ori Miklat shouldn't daven that the Kohen, my mothers would give food to the inmates, so they shouldn't daven that the Kohen dies. For Gemara, like, what do you care if they daven that the Kohen should die? Don't we know kilas chinam loy savai? So the Gemara says, no, it wasn't kilas chinam, because they should have davened that this shouldn't happen. But we see based on a pasuk in Mishlei, and again quote the pasuk, kilas chinam loy savai. So what do you care if the person curses? And to the extent it's averos chamuris b'Torah, but that conclusion cannot be. As we said, there is Shas is full of different curses we find in Tanakh, and you find the beginning of the Torah, there's a concept of cursing. So here, Re'ez Apella. I'm going to just be magnum a small yisoid, and we'll have enough information for the rest of the sugya. The Rambam in Sefer Mitzvah Leisasa Shin Yud Zayin, he says, Haven Mimenu, listen, let me explain this to you. He says, a person by nature, when he's angered and upset, but naturally he wants to take revenge. That's human nature. But it depends on a person's level. Sometimes he just, a verbal revenge, he just retaliates verbally, he says something nasty, and he feels fulfilled. Sometimes he has to damage someone's money to put a closure on his anger. Sometimes he has to hit the person, and sometimes he's so enraged that he has to kill the other person. You know, today we hear about road rage, someone cuts him off, he shoots him with a gun. You know, that's a goyish attitude, but you know, don't get mad, get even. You look at the Mesilas Yesharim, in Perikut Aleph, how he describes a person that's angry. He says a person loses control, k'chayis tarfas, he could destroy the whole world. And why do we see this? Now, Zok the Rambam, that Lamaisa, this is a person when he's out of control. Now, we would add, of course, if only he would remember the Gemara in Chul and Daf Tzadik Tes, Ein ha'olam iskayim el b'shvil mi she'boilam es atzma b'shas meriva. The person just would hit the pause button, you know, like say in America. So don't react. You're angry? Okay, just wait. Don't, because whatever you do now, you're going to have kharata. Zok the Rambam weiter. But when a person lashes out, he's always going to do something wrong. Zok the Rambam, and here's a pliya, and I'll read his Heilige Verta. Ki ha-Torah lo yikpide be'inyan ha-makol levad. The issur of klal is not to protect the victim that's getting cursed, but it's for the toiva of the one that's cursing. Because if you allow yourself to curse, that means you're giving in to your anger and you're out of control. If you know, you gotta be quiet. You have to boil and piv. You can't say anything. Cursing, you're not hitting him, you're not damaging his money, you're not killing him, but you're responding. And that's the enemy. The enemy is when you let yourself respond when you're out of control. So listen to his lashon. It's not only for the protection of the makolol, what a gem of the Rambam. You know, we know about bin Adam l'chaveroi. Zog the Rambam that the issur of klala is bin Adam la'atzmai. It's for your benefit. Now, I don't be moisemay. When I say to you the word you, I don't mean this heilig eda kedosha. I mean the you out there that are not learning and not listening. But the you that's doing wrong, it's for your benefit. That's an issur d'oraisa of klala. It's a training not to allow yourself to explode when you're angry. And Rabbeinu Bachai, another Rishon, the Chayvus Levavos, and Rabbeinu Bachai and Al Torah, has the same yisoid. It's a protection in bin Adam la'atzmai. If you don't get angry this time, next time you certainly won't get angry. And the emes, I was thinking, that's the smichas of the pasuk, because a few psukim later it says leisika and v'leisita. Klala is training and leisikim is lamais. But this is not the only pshat. The chinuch and mitzvah reish lamed aleph, he also asked this question. You know, people don't understand. He says, what's wrong with klala? What's wrong with words? So he says, but klala is so effective that even as the Gemara says, even altia killas hedjit kala binecha. In other words, a chacham, a tzaddik, has a much more powerful lashon, but it's not limited to chachamim. Zok the chinuch, even a killas hedjit is effective. What's the pshat? And listen to how he says it. Shemananu Hashem bihezik bifinu lezulasenu kamay shemananu bihezik lem b'maisa. We understand that if you break someone's window, you damage him, right? That's bechira. Zok the chinuch, the Gemara says in Mayikotin Yudches, bris krusel vasayim. That's a pasuk, but the Gemara darshins that a person says something, it has an impact. We also know that the essence, or better yet, the godless of a person, a person's yichus, a person's greatness is his words. So if we could damage someone else with our hands, we could certainly damage him with our mouths. Because the koyach of dibur is unfathomable. And he says that even goyim understand the terrible effect of a curse, because words are not harmless. And then he says another pshat, that lamaisa, he says when a person, the biggest cause of machlokes is when people hear what they said about him. Oh, you said that about me? Wow, I'm so upset at you. And he says, if you curse someone, he'll find out about it. But that's not his main reason. His main reason is because words are not harmless. Words are very devastating. And then he quotes the Rambam respectfully. The Rambam says a different reason, but I think my reason is better. But here we come to an extremely important yesod. Words are not harmless. The Rashba in Chelik Aleph, and the Chuvas Chelik Aleph Tav Ches, also says the same yesod. He said, I'm going to straighten you out in what the Gemara says, in one of the many Gemaras in Brachos Nun Vav about the curse. They're worried about the curse. He says, philosophers go with Teva. But someone that knows anything knows that what we don't see does not mean it doesn't exist. He gives a mashal. Can we explain how a magnet moves metal? Or how a person, when he opens his mouth during the cold winter, smoke comes out of it? So today they do understand. But he's saying the fact that we can't explain or understand it does not mean it doesn't exist. And his main example is bris kruselos vasayim, כשגגה היוצה מפי השליט, the Gemara says in Ksubas Samach Beis, al tia birchas hedget kala beinecha, al tia kilos hedget kala beinecha. The point is that words can bring bracha and words can bring klala. There's a bracha and there's a klala. Al yiftax adnem pelasot. The Raj, what does that mean? You say something, it happens. And he says, this is the point. Words are a mazik bepeh. So it's a very different understanding the Rambam. Like the Rambam, klala is bein adam la'atzmai. Like the chinuch, it's a mazik b'dat mechaverei. And I would add, according to the chinuch, there's a smichas to a few psukim later, like say lech rachel v'amecha. Also, the Rambam says words, lashon hara is macher v'so'ilam. So basically, there's a machlokes in the fundamental understanding of klala. Like the Rambam, it's for our benefit. Like the chinuch, it's because words are a mazik bepeh. Now, before we apply this lemais, I want to make a point again that even though a chacham, we'll see from as we proceed, a chacham, a tzaddik has a much more effective use of his lashon, both l'klala and l'bracha, but don't minimize. Like the Gemara says, kilas, afilo kilas hedget is also very meaningful. Another point I must mention, although the Rambam explains that it's been adam la'atzmai, it doesn't mean the Rambam held there's no koyach in a curse. The Rambam's lashon is ki atayr like pide b'inyan amakol levad. In other words, it's not only to protect the victim, but of course the Rambam accepted that words have meaning. That's replete in Shas. So now again, let's apply this lemais. We'll try to organize it so we could retain it better. The first question is the most obvious question. What exactly constitutes a klala? Does he have to mention Shem Hashem? Do you have to say a lashon of orur or mekala? Do you have to be a PhD in klala like Bilham who knew exactly what to say? Is there any special nusach? So the answer, like to every question of today, is zil basatayma. Like the Rambam, the point is control yourself. So you know what the problem is? Any reaction. Like I mind that the Chazon Ish was once walking with a Talmud and a guy said something very nasty. And the Bacha responded. So the Chazon Ish says, you didn't respond like a Ben Torah. So he goes, Rebbe, so how does a Ben Torah respond? He goes, he doesn't respond. That's the Ben Torah's response. You don't respond. The Rambam holds, how do you respond? You don't. Once you said something, even Kalaim, like Bilam, that means you're not in control. You're out of control. So Avada, there is no specific nusach. Certainly doesn't have to be Shem Hashem. But even according to the chinuch, if the words do damage, so what do you have to have? A nusach of klala or orur? Mara says even when one said to the other, one Amar said to the other about Avelis, and it happened to him. Once you understand that words are very, very powerful, it doesn't have to have a nusach of klala. It has to have the mazik of klala. And again, there are many in Mishalim. I'll give you one for now. The Gemara in Bava Metzia Mem Ches says when someone doesn't keep his word, they give him a Misha Parah. Now others, the Rasha'im discuss, what about the Kallala? But he deserves it. We'll soon see. When you deserve it, you get it. Misha Parah doesn't have a lashon of Kallala. It's a statement. Misha Parah from the Dar HaMabel, Dar HaFlag. The teretz is, if, I found the beautiful sefer that on Hilchas Kallala from Ramad Chagros, the bracha v'loy l'klala, he says, he teaches the issur is of klala is ichol l'ra'ah. Ichol means you wish someone ra. That's the definition of klala. And therefore it's lav daf with a nusach. It's the opposite of bracha that's using koyach of diba l'toiv. Klala is using words in any form l'ra. So basically it's maves v'chayim b'yad haloshin. Bracha is the chayim and klala is the maves. I give you a mashal, but again, there's so many mashalim. But the Gemara says in brachas, a person is leich lishalim. That's good. Leich bishalim is terrible. A difference of an ois, because every word counts. The Gemara says in Ma'id Cotton, it's in Chav Zayin Beis, it's kepas in Yeridei Shin Ayin Vav Beis. Never tell an avel sit or a chayla sit. Why? Because it means sit in the avelis. Now, how do we understand that? If you understand that words wreak havoc in someone's life, this is a word. Also, I should mention, and this is a Pharisee Gemara in a few places, klal is lav dafka life and death. Not if you curse someone, he should die. The Gemara in Megillah Daf Hey Amud Beis, Rav saw someone that was working on Purim, so he cursed him. And we'll soon see it was mutter v'tayelis. That was a curse. He didn't curse, he should die. But cursing someone that his mamonis should be affected is abusing the koyach of lashon. So like the Rambam, the issur is, you're angry, you're out of control. Like the chinuch, it's mazik. So zil basa taima, it's lav dafka lashon klala, and it's lav dafka maves type of klala. I just saw in another sefer, I want to make Makatoy, page 345, he asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, is there any share, even a small amount of money? So Reb Chaim responded, but kol klala, any type of klala is a surah. Lav dafka big or small. And the svaras, like the Rambam and like the chinuch, the reason applies. I once overheard the boys were talking, and they had a test the next day. I hope the teacher gets sick, so he won't come and give a test. So that's a klala. It's a klala deraisa. Even if they hope he gets a flat, so he'll be delayed. It's also klala deraisa. You're using words to hurt someone else. Someone, his neighbor's doing work and is very loud. He says, I hope he gets a violation, so he'll stop the hacking and the banging. So I don't know if he means it, but he said it. And words do damage. Pashit. We'll get to that soon. Even without Shem Hashem, there's an issur. Now, why? So zil basa taima. Like the Rambam, the problem is you're leashing out. Like the chinuch, dibur, ra, is mazik. Now, the emes is, that's why in svara, mavis v'chaim biyad aloshin, lav dafka, with Shem Hashem. Now, of course, if someone uses the Shem Hashem, that's much worse. But I'll just give you my aspilus. I saw in the Sefer Shari Avram, he points out something fascinating. If someone is really not by davening, but he's davening, and he says on Tisha B'Av, he says, Al anisim b'mei Esther. Totally inappropriate, right? But like the Mechaba, he's Yoytze Shmon Esrei, even though it's a sheker, because it's a hefsik, but it doesn't shtera Shmon Esrei. But we know that halacha psuka, it's a sif in Shulchan Aruch. If someone says Mashiv Ruach during the summer, he has to daven over. Why? How could that be worse than Al Anisim on Tisha B'Av? The Shalmi in Tainis Dav Beis, and the place can quote this, because it's a klala. Because rain during the summer is klala. Now, who's davening? It's not the Rashke Bahag, it's little old me. So I say Mashiv Haruach Hamayid Hageshem, what, the world's going to start storming? Maybe yes. But that's not the point. A word that a person says, no difference who he is or what he is a klala. And that's passes the Shemon Esrei more than davening and saying Ya'al V'Yavim without Rosh Chodesh. because every person has a koyach hadibur. Now, the emes is the Torah in the beginning of our simon. By the way, we have a whole simon today in Chai Shemishpat, Simon Chav Zayin. But the Torah in the beginning of Simon Chav Zayin says Mefurish that Klola Derais is Lav Dafka B'Shem. The Bach and the Shach say that as well. The Chinuch in Minchas Chinuch and Simon Sambach Tes Ois Dalid quotes Deis that maybe it's Dafka B'Shem Hashem. But the way that most poskim understand, the only shaila is if he gets malchus, then do you need Shem Hashem or not? But a klal deraisa, like almost all poskim, if he says a lashon klala, is an issa deraisa. A nice arichas in Rabbi Yochanan Fischel Parallel Sefer in Essay Aleph, he quotes a Ben Yoida. It seems to be a little more mekel, but I think the mainstream poskim is to get malchus. Some say dafka Shem Hashem, but the issa klal deraisa is even without Shem Hashem. But one thing I will say, that you see the fact that Birchas Hashem, of course that's a euphemism, but Makal Avav Imai is Mais Yumas. So basically we have to be careful. I saw the Tumim in our Simon Chav Zayin Beis, and all the Paiskim, the Nesivas, the Kitzah B'Shteburen and Reish Tezvav, Sif Yotes, says if someone says, God Selam Strafin, so he's Makal B'Shem. Because he loved after using the actual Shem Hashem. Even in Yiddish, that's also Shem Hashem. And I give you an example. I hope it doesn't sound familiar, but I'm talking to the Jews that are not here today. The Pelayoy, it's an error. Klola writes when someone gets angry and curses his children. Somebody says, "Oh, one day you're gonna have children just like you." And boy, is that a curse, if you know what I mean. So he says, people not thinking. He wouldn't want to hurt a hair on this child's head. But he's doing much worse. He says, if you're angry, better beat the child, because then he could recover. But you're cursing your own child? He's sheichet es yoladav. He's shechting his children. Now, the emes is, you might here you see another chiddush, because really deep down the parent doesn't want the child to get hurt. But he's so angry he leashes out. But that's the problem. So you see, even though maybe he doesn't mean it deep down, but at least superficially he does, and the machshava doesn't not oiked the dibur. So basically, it's something that a person has to be aware of. But there's, I think, another point that has to be mentioned. As I said, human nature. A person gets angry, he lashes out, and that's churban. Do we have enough chinuch in this? Do we have enough chinuch that the greatest gibor is hamaval midoisa, Roshana Yudzayim, or Chulin Sadik Tes, Boilam, Piv Vishas Meriva? The best chinuch is when a parent is a good example. Men used to say, the best chinuch is caught, not taught. Caught means when a child sees, when his parents say, oh, my father's very angry, but he didn't say a word. He's in control. But the worst chinuch is when the parent curses the child, or shows that when you get angry, you're allowed to do what you want. He is fortifying his child with a new ammunition called Klola. And that's the churban. So it's basically a good, very, very good chinuch, a very lasting chinuch, when the child remembers, when my parents get angry, they're also human, but they never said a word. They were in control. Pashit, because even though they don't really mean it, but like the pasuk says in Mishlei, it's like shooting an arrow, and Nebuch is a bullseye, and he said, I was just joking. I mean, you're just joking. You're just killing. That's the word. So basically, it has to be, maves v'chayim biyad haloshin, and again, the best chinuch is caught when the parent is a good example. Coming back to halachas lemaisa, someone asked me if he curses shalai b'fanav. For example, this is what he told me. He was made up to go with someone, and 8 o'clock, so he was waiting outside in the cold, 8 o'clock, 8:15, 8:30, and he was so angry, he said, pardon me, I'll get into there, I'm going myself. So before he said, I'm going myself, I'll get into there, or go lazazel. And then he thought, maybe he made a klala, but it was shlei b'fanav. So the answer is, zil basatayma. Loimi boy like the Rambam, that the ikki is not for the makulal, it's for you. And here you blew it, you ruined it, you'll get loose. But like the chinuch is also pashut, because the problem is the dibur hamazik. You say about Yisrael again in the Ederein, that's not a very very beneficial way of talking. So that's why the ichul hara is even shalai b'fanav. But the biggest raya zok the chinuch is from the pasuk. Like the kala cheirish. The cheirish doesn't hear, doesn't know, But it's not necessarily what the cherish. And if the person hears, so maybe you're also getting a bonus, the issur of Einos Devarim and Avteach Kamoichel Leisisna. But minimally, curse is even Shalai B'Fanav. Now this leads us to the next question. Let's say a person is angry, but he doesn't want to be politically incorrect, so he keeps his curse b'machshava. He keeps it in. So the the answer again is zil basatayma. Because like the Rambam was supposed to be in control, not to activate our kas. If a person makes the effort of cursing b'machshava, that's the problem. You're supposed to be in control. The only thing is, the question is, like the chinuch, here we have to clarify. Does a klala b'machshava do damage? Dibur is a terrible klala, a terrible mazik. Is there a mazik b'machshava? So the chayra, this should be totally in the question if hirer kadibur or not. If you hold hirer kadibur, so just like a klala b'dibur's mazik, we could assume that klala b'machshava. But probably that's not true for two reasons. First of all, we paskin in Shulchan Aruch 3 places, hirer laf kadibur. But even if hirer kadibur, as we once spoke, when a person thinks Shem Hashem, he's not oiva on saying Shem Hashem. Even Shemei Ka'oina, there's no issa of saying Shem Hashem if it's not necessary. Why? Because when it comes, sometimes there's an issa of dibur. And even if hirer kadibur, but there's no issa of leisisa, by a hirer. So it makes sense that if the ikka of the klala is the dibur hamazik, the mavis biyad haloshin, who says there is an issa of klala, there's a mazik of klala b'machshava. Now the emphasis, I do know that in Gemara Sanhedrin of Kofei Mebei said Bilam had the ability to curse even b'machshava, because Bilam was an expert. But Aitakasar Matcha Gross in a Sefer points to Masha and Saitav Memvav Amid Beis, with Masha said beferish that there's no issa of klala b'machshava. Now there's no mitzvah of it, That's the issa le'sitzachil b'vavecha, but at least there's no issa taka de sefer yach kamoicha, quotes Reb Chaim Kanievsky, klala hu mashemoitzi b'svasav. That's page 347 of that sefer. Now there's more of an interesting question: is there an issa klala b'ksav? And Ma'isa Shahaya, someone was very upset about someone else, so he wrote a letter to his father, and he expressed all his anger in the letter. So again, he was politically correct, he didn't tell the person anything, but here, we have to really think about that for a moment. How do you identify writing? In other words, mitzad echad, it's worse than hirer, because it's coming to a ma'isa. He did a ma'isa, it's not just b'machshava. B'yachas HaTorah, we don't say on hirer b'Torah, but we do say on writing Torah. It's a Siman Mem Zayin in Orach Chayim. But then again, if we understand the issur klala is using dibur, because mavis biyad loshain, maybe there's no mavis biyad ksiva. So we have to know, is there something effective in ksiva? So the emphasis, we once gave a whole share about this, but we paskin miyikadin ksiva lav kadibur. That's for sure. כשגגה has his famous chuvas to his debate with his uncle Rav Wolf Eger in Madur Kamasim and Chavtes, Lamed and Lamed Aleph, that he held that there is ksiva kadibur, and כשגגה has the chiddush to say sometimes a person could do a mitzvah, svira if he writes the svira, that's famous chiddush, but most poskim seem to assume that ksiva is lav kadibur regarding mitzvahs. But the question is, maybe regarding klala, since he's expressing it, he's not holding it in like the Rambam Mizayva. And could be even like the chinuch, the ksiva is something very effective. So the tumim, in Sin Metzadik Rav Sid Cotton Hay, there's a beautiful tshuva, the tshuva Meyahava, the Yehuda's Talmud, in Chele Gimel Simon Shinai in Hay, they discuss this barichas and they leave it as a suffix. Now, rather the tshuva Meyahava is talking about kilas of ve'ima, which is more chamar, but again, a beautiful discussion. You'll see in the Yirkam official parallel in Chele Gimel and Beloyim Simon Aleph. Is there an issa of cursing by ksiva? So for us that we have no achra, we will say it's a sveika deraisa l'chumra. Of course, all these nasty pashkevilis, you know what that means, it's worse than it sounds, but the nasty hate letters and hate posters is definitely a klala bedibur. You don't have to, person doesn't have to sign in it to be oiva. So the hate mail and the hate pashkevillas should be, you know, outlawed because they are against the law. But basically, it's dibur and maybe ksiv as well. Interesting question that made it to a Mishnah. Is there an issur when a person curses himself? So you're wondering, who cursed himself? We'll soon give examples. But is there an issur for cursing oneself? So the answer, like everything else today, is il basataima. If the issur, like the Rambam, is nekama, so there's no nekama on oneself. You know, the famous Yishalmi says there's no nekama one year to the other, because left hand to right hand. The question is, according to the chinuch, is it asa? Is a person mazik himself with lashon? So be'ebreza pella. This is a Mishnah. The Mishnah in Shvuos of Lamed Hey, hamakal al atzmai is oiva v'chaveri b'kul and oiva b'lav. Whether you curse someone else or yourself, you're oiva and alav. It sounds like that there's an issa klala deraisa by cursing oneself, but it's not the truth, because the Gemara says, where's the issa? What's the issa cursing oneself? So the Gemara, divrei hakol atzmai d'chsiv rakisham lecha u'shmar nafshecha ma'oid. The issa is shmiras hanefesh. You have to watch your own health, and cursing yourself is damaging yourself. So the Gemara, but you curse someone else, that's this like sekal cherish. So it's interesting. The Gemara is telling us there's an issa deraisa cursing oneself out protecting your health, because again, curses do damage. But there's no issa of sekal cherish. So I was thinking, adrabah, like the Rambam, it's very meduyik. Since cursing oneself, nikama to oneself doesn't exist, there is no issa like sekal cherish. So what then is the issa? It's like a person that commits suicide. He's hurting himself because words hurt. So therefore we could say, kert, that there is no issa cursing oneself mitzat cursing, but it's dangerous. And you know, it's noteworthy, because Tosis Afanard asked a question. There's a machlokes if chayvel ba'atzmai is awesome. So why is cursing ba'atzmai a mishnah that's awesome? It's worse? You know what the answer is? It is worse. Because words, klala, is worse than nakah. But this is gepaskin in Chayshemish v'chav zayin aleph, the mechabes mekal echad mi Yisrael, and the ma'ed afilu mekal atzmai is oiv. Now again, we don't usually curse ourselves, but I'll give you a few examples which needs a chinuch to our children and grandchildren, because it was something Yidden were always very careful about, and lately it became a little disregarded. The Gemara says in Gittin and Zayin that when a person learns halachic shchita, don't show on yourself. Alecha ragnu kol hayoim, that's tamid chamim, that when they learn shchita they show on themselves. That's wrong. When we learn Masechta Yevamis, again, I'm talking you, I don't mean you. If people say, you die, I die, your brother, my brother, why are we saying our brother should die? Do you know the Chassam Sofer, when he learned with his Talmidim, either Masechta Yevamis or Chulin, he would fast the day before? He was afraid someone would say about your brother die, my brother die, or Shchita, and he would fast that the Schus of Torah should protect them, they shouldn't be harmed by their learning. The Gemara says in Chulin Daf Kuf Yud, he said he didn't wear tefillin because he has a stomach problem, talking about himself. The Gemara in Yuma, Shimon HaTzadik said next year he's going to die, talking about himself. Chagiga Tezayim at Beis, L'mocha Hu Meis, is going on himself. Kahena v'chahena, the Gemara says bris kruselis vasayim, you say about Avelis, it might happen to him. The Magen Avraham and Reish Lam Bates Siv Gimel says don't say Avida Shchiv Meira, saying about yourself. Al tiftach pel l'satan. And then you have people saying, oh, I went through a surgery, it's the worst thing. They lay you down, they cut you up, and you know he's describing cut you up, and they, you know, even Pari didn't talk that way. What did Pari say? V'olam min haaretz, not v'alinu min haaretz. You know, people, you know, it's a way of talking that's against our whole sugya. So basically, we have to be careful. Al tiftach pel l'satan. You know, we are careful what we say. Things that really need a chinuch, because the children don't know until they're told. But I'll tell you, an ha'ara nechayna. So I wonder if a person's allowed to be so like not careful with mumminess of his own mum. To say about his life, kill atzmei is awesome. But it could be mekal al atzmei b'mamoinoi. Maybe he's not really awesome. Because the issur is shmor nafshecha ma'oid. Maybe you got to be mumminous. We don't say that. But no one says it, so I'm not sure. The mice doesn't seem like it's the right thing to do. Question. The famous sugya in the Gemara and Tainis Chafalaf Nochem Ish Gamzu, he did what he thought was wrong, and he cursed himself in a very real way. His eyes, his hands, and his feet. It's asatim kalalat. So again, the Paiskim discuss this, and basically as a tikkun, as a kapara, as chuvas muta. In fact, we find in the beginning of Siman Tov Kuf Alpha Narachayim, person's allowed to fast self-affliction as a kapara. The Paiskim discuss how David Melch is allowed to say, Tidbak l'shayni l'chiki, if I won't remember Yushalayim, same teretz. But there's a teretz, because it's a kasha. It has to be oiskalten. The Paiskim discuss how a child could say about a parent when the parent passed away, Hareini kaparas mishkavai. Why is that a violation of Makal Latzmai? So the teretz has to be, if that's the Ratzon Hashem, and that's the mitzvah, it has to be done. But there has to be a cheshbon before we talk. Someone asked me, is there a heta if the victim, the makul, gives me rishus to curse him? So maybe the fact that he's rishus is muta. So the answer is zilbasa taima. Like the chinuch, the problem is that the curse is doing damage. There's no heta. A person can't give you a right to hurt him, right? And you can't. There's no heta to hurt someone else, even rishus. So according to the Rambam, you could declare, maybe if he lets you, but then again, if you're doing it als nekama, that's the problem. And Zokta Ar Sameach in Hilchot Sanhedrin Chav Vav Vav, the whole kasha doesn't, the whole shaila doesn't begin. Because if a person is not allowed to curse himself, even though he gives rishus, it's a mishnah, avada and avada, rishus doesn't help. Next group of questions, which is a little more challenging, is there ever a heta for klala? So one thing I want to say, to whom it may concern, people think if I don't curse by name, but I curse groups of people, he has an ideological problem about, group Pliny, and he curses them. So that is worse than cursing a yachid, because a yachid is one person, and a group is thousands. And that's Pashat, the Rambam, Hilchos Tshuva, Perek Dal, Halacha Gimel, in fact, gives an example on an avera that a person will never do tshuva because he thinks he never did an issur, and that's cursing a group of people. The Minchas Chinuch in the mitzvah of Reish Lamed Aleph, beginning, Lav Dafka Makal Ish Prati, even a Makal and Eir Be Yisrael, is Avada the same Issa, if not worse. Now, we are very opinionated, and sometimes we don't like other groups of people, so that's an issue you have to deal with. But Chalila v'Chalil to curse a group of people, that's a much bigger Issa, and certainly not a Heta if you didn't mention names. More of an issue is if a person feels sinas Yisrael from Goyim, is there any Issa in cursing a Goy? So that's Baruch Hashem is a Ferish Pasik, V'nasi ba'amcha lo yisa'ar. It's limited to a Yid. Ois ma'isa amcha. And you look at Masech T'Soif in the end of Perek Daled, like the Gersa of the Gra and Nachas Yaakov, it's Mefurish Masech T'Soifrim, the Is is only ba'ois ma'isa amcha, but Amakalel, the Ramzlash, Amakalel, Adam Yisrael, Chayiv. So the Paiskim are Medayik, but cursing a guy is not Issa. The Minchas Chinuch and Sif Katan Hey says this as well. But again, Yidden that want to have a Heilig Galoshin, why put yourself in clothes? If there's a reason to curse a guy, okay, but it's time to curse, I'm always the spoil we find by the Erni Dachas, Bezdin to give them Misas Bezdin, they did a mitzvah, but the Torah says, V'nosach l'racham and v'richamcha. After they gave Misa, they have to have Rachmanus. What they do wrong? Dr. Chaim HaKadosh, because physically you kill someone. So that's affecting, it's impacting your Midas, your Reinkite. Cursing people is impacting our Reinkite, our Tahara. So why curse? Better learn a Rashba, take out a Mishnayos, but don't curse. But if there's a reason, it's no us. Yeah. Yeah, we find a lot in Tanakh. David HaMelech also curses enemies. So we'll soon see there has to be a reason for it. You're right. Throughout Tehillim, David is cursing, Yeshaya. So we're going to get to that. Wait, we're going to get to that. Now, the next question, is there an issur by a mace? To curse a mace. Sometimes the person passed away, but his evil lives on. So the answer for us is Zil Basatayma. Like the Rambam, the issur is not for the victim, it's for me. If I'm angry and I can't control myself, that's the violation of Makalo. Like the Chinuch, we have to wonder, is a curse effective even to a person after he dies? Does a Klola affect a mace? So we have, again, I told you many times, we have a Reicha Torah. We know regarding Lashon Hara, there's no issur on a mace. But Chafetz Chaim brings from the famous Cher Makadmoinim, you shouldn't say Lashon Hara about a mace. Do we find any reference to that Mekalel mace? Avada. It's a Gemara Sanhedrin Daf Pei Hey. Mekal Ava Ve'imai Mois Yumas is even Acha Moisai. As I state in Yeridea at the beginning of Reish Mem Aleph. The Sefer Chasidim Atavkuf Ayin Vav explains, because there is a hezek to the neshama Acha Misa. So Mekal Ava Ve'imai is Mois Yumas. Why? Because it does damage to the neshama even after Misa. You look more Barichas, the Teras Chaim and Sanhedrin Bavakama Daf Tzadik. The oil on neshamas is not, if you hit a mace, it doesn't hurt the mace. But Kallala or bezoyin is ruchnius, and that could affect the person, the neshama, even when there's no more guf. But here's the question. Maybe let's be medayik fakert. Mekal Ava Ve'imai is a Gemara, is a pasuk that is asa. Who said Mekal, a regular person, that's not a relative, that's not a parent? And you look at the Lashon of the Rambam, Hamakal es hameis potter. Zok the Kesef Mishnah. Why do Rambam say it's potter? Because since you have to have a Farish pasuk, the Makal Ava Ve'imai is chayiv, is mashma regular person, there's no issur. And that's the Mechaba in Choyshe Mishpat, Chavzai and Beis, Hamakal es hameis potter. But I'm sure you notice the obvious diik, the Lashon of potter, sounds like potter avalasa. And taka the steichem and chelik vav klole poiskim tezvav ois tezayin. He says the lashon of the Rambam and the Mechaber is potter because it's still an issur d'rabbanan to curse even a mace that is not aviv oy imay. And I imagine the reason is, like we said, a person is it's denting his midas and start with talking bad about ideas. But avada the issur d'rais is only by aviv imay acha moisei. The big question is there any heta to curse a Rasha? To say machshemoy about achaynu b'sein, about another yid? So avada, we're talking about someone that's a Rasha. You know, if someone doesn't agree to my philosophy, doesn't make him a Rasha. And I'm talking about someone that will say is a Rasha Mehuder. You know, people like to find on Purim an Evyoin Mehuder. But this is a Rasha Mehuder with Allah Hidurim. Okay, that's the given. And I'm talking about someone that's, you know, subjective, you know, that I don't like his sheet. It's a real Rasha. So the emes is, we'll go back to our pasuk. V'nasi ba'amcha ba'oisa ma'isa amcha. If he's a Rasha, al pi Torah, then I'm allowed to curse him l'chayra. And taka we find numerous places, like you mentioned, but in Tilim, in Tanakh, Tanoim, Amaroyim, again, the back of that sefer, I think it's called Bracha Ukva Kallala. Ramotcha Gross finds 53 places in Shas alone that they cursed one another. The Chazanish and Sanhedrin, in the Sanhedrin Chaf Ois Yud, beside the Sefer names, Haklal Lebracha, that's the name of the Sefer. And page Kuf Chaf Ches, he has over 50 places in Shas alone, but you look in Tehillim, it's replete with these ideas. And Taka, there's 5 places in Shas, in Sanhedrin Pei and other places as well. Eina Oisa Ma'isa Amcha, there's no issur of Kallala. But again, the lashon throughout in these sugyas is potter. Obviously, there might be something wrong. But what I think Rabbi say, you have to realize there was a lot written about this question, because throughout the Dairis, we lied from some people that deserve to be called Yamach Shemoy. But the big question is, you know, it's a lot easier to talk about a chicken, a piece of chicken, talk about an Erev, and talk about on Shabbos, but to talk about thousands of brothers and sisters of ours is no simple matter. You know, the Gemara says in Brachas Daf Yud, Rameya cursed a Rasha, and a real Rasha. But his wife corrected him. You don't curse Rishayim, you curse Resha. You tabu chatoyim v'loy chaytim. 2 stories we find about cursing the bad, not bad people. A Yid should know to curse another Yid, you're playing with fire. The Rebbeinu Shloim has a terrible, terrible tsar from what that Rosh is doing. But it's only exasperated when we curse him. Like even Yidden are talking bad. And that's really the Chachma of Mishlei in Perik Lamed Pasuk Yud. Al talshin eved el adoinav. Don't tell a father bad about his child, even if the child is rebellious. But it hurts terribly when a parent has a rebellious child. And let me read you Lashon of the Zohar. Of course, it's translated in Lashon HaKodesh, but this is the exact Lashon in the Zohar in Paras Vayera. Asa la'adam l'spal al rashayim sheyistalk min ha'olam. Don't daven they should die. But listen to his cheshbon. Shel maloi silka kadet kutchabrichu l'terach min ha'olam k'she'oyav ravayda zara. If the Baruch Hu taken away terror from this world, like Bo Avram Avinu l'olam, v'shifti Yisrael lehayu, u'melech David v'melech Mashiach terror le'nitna, v'chal oisin zadik v'naviyim lehayu ba'olam. Bal Zoya Kodesh. But a beautiful cheshbon. Without terach, there wouldn't be an Avram, and there wouldn't be a Klal Yisrael. So who knows what you're eliminating with your words? Fakerta, you mean it l'shem shemayim, but the Baruch Hu doesn't want to hear bad about his children. Al talshin eved el adoinav. The Shizlev used to say, "Haper le'nivra el l'lmei Torah ulam etzanegur al Klal Yisrael." So I know we do say v'lam nalshinim 3 times a day, and some people add the word minim. Okay, that's their prerogative. We do say we'll soon say it, the Shashanas Yaakov, Arum Kol Rishayim. But who said it's going on Yiddish Rishayim? Who said La Mashinim? The bulk of it is not going on Yidden. So again, it's questionable, but I want to say the Chazinish that I mentioned earlier in Sanhedrin, Perikaf, Ois Yud, he quotes a number of Gemaras that they cursed other Yidden, but he says because there was a Dava Chayva to protect, to maintain the Kavod HaTorah, that was a jeopardy. In other words, the basic klal is there is a heta, and when it's necessary, David did it, Yeshaya did it, and Gedolei Olam did it in Gemaras. But I told someone, I think this is a very good bit of advice. If someone doesn't curse Rishayim, and he comes at Vienna Welt after he lives on years, says, "Why did you curse Rishayim? Why didn't it bother you?" He says, "I was afraid to. It was your children." He's okay, guaranteed. But he would say, "Why did you curse Rishayim?" He says, "I couldn't be soivel ra." And the Bezos Jamal will burst out and laughing. You couldn't be soivel ra, and what about your ra? So it's much safer to be shev al tasa. You don't curse because you're afraid. The Baruch Hu's child. Now again, we find it very much throughout Tanakh. And I'll tell you one story that puts it in perspective. The Avinezer was the Adam of the Kotzka. I'm sure he was a sharfa. Someone once said in his presence about another Yid, Yamach Shemoy. So let me ask you a question. Let's say this Yid dies and he has no children. What's halacha with his wife? He has a chiv yibam, right? Why? The Torah says, La Yamach Shemay B'Yisrael. The Torah zuk La Yamach Shemay B'Yisrael, and these zuks Yamach Shemay. What a beautiful attitude. Yamach Shemay, on a Yid, the Torah says not to be. And Lamaisa, the only exception, of course, is Yeshu. That's his name, Yamach Shemay V'Zichroi, because he was the unparalleled Mesis of Madiach. But the Chavetz Chaim is Yedua refused b'shum oifen to ever say Yamach Shemay. But anybody, to curse anybody. In fact, there's a beautiful story. We have a Kabbalah. Someone came into the Chavetz Chaim Shiva, and Mamish was Mavazer Chavetz Chaim in a terrible way. And on the spot, he went Meshuggah. Literally, he went Meshuggah. And he went so much sugar that he ran to the lake, jumped to the lake, and committed suicide. And they came back, and there was a big write-up how the Chavetz Chaim cursed him. And we have a letter, where I saw the letter. The Chavetz Chaim wrote, I never cursed another Yid. But I will say, he got his einish because he played around with Torah. Chavetz Chaim called a spade a spade. But he said, I never said Yamach Shem, I never cursed another Yid. So this is the advice that we have from our Chazal HaKadoshim, that cursing another Yid, Yamach Shemoy, should not be used. I once heard someone, I guess he wanted to show how right he was, I said about someone else who was alive, Afro Lepume. I don't know if he knows what that meant. Now, Afro Lepume, we find the Gemara. In Bava Basra, that Tazayin, Eev said a kfira, and the Gemara says, Afro Lepume de Eev. Now, what does it mean, Afro Lepume de Eev? I know it sounds pretty exciting that you say it dramatically, Afro Lepume. What does it mean? So the Pasha, I don't know which of the one pshat akapanim is that fill your mouth with dirt so you won't talk so much. But there's another pshat. By a mace, they put the offer in his mouth. So you're talking about a safek klal deraisa. Mabish, a safek klal deraisa. The Alshich in Bereshis Perek Gimel, he says that Afro Lepume is, it should happen to him what happened to the Nachash, which is also klal deraisa. So Lamaisa, it's interesting. I once always spoiled the Ramban in the beginning of Bereshis. I quote his Heilig Galoshin, Yutzak Zovrei Seyach L'Seich Piv Shel Oisei Rasha Aristotle. So even he's talking about the Rasha Aristotle, He says it in the Eloif, and Yutzak Zohav Reiseach L'Toich Piv, even with a Russia. But how could he get saved? Another Yid Afro Lepume? It's people are not thinking. The Chavetz Chaim Al Atar and Parsh Vayetze points out a Dav Nifla Ma'oid, how Mosa we have to be careful. He says, the brothers came back, the sons of Yaakov came back, and they said about this Russian Mitzrayim, this wicked viceroy. He's framing us. He said we did things wrong, and he's terrible, terrible, terrible. So how did Yaakov respond? He sent them a gift, and he says, "Don't worry, go back, and hopefully things will work out." So the Chavetz Chaim pointed out, imagine if Yaakov would have cursed that Russia, that goy, that sheket. Who would he have destroyed? His Balip, the son Yosef. And I think there's a murder cheshbon here. Because Yaakov, Kaviyachal, lost Rachel because of the wrong word. Because when they accused him of taking the trophy, he said, no, whoever did it should, and never happened to Rachel. And now he was masaking it, whatever that means, but Yosef. Yosef was Rachel's son. So it is a heiress of not to shoot out a word, because words are very meaningful. Just give you a dogma of how halacha is focused on every little thing. The question is a Rasha allowed to be Makala himself? Because you're allowed to Makala Rasha, Mikradin. So, Zok the Chinuch can't be. Why? Because a Rasha is also Mechuyev in Shmir Saguf HaNefesh. That's a halbatzah. I saw the Cyrus Tshuva in Chayshemish with Simon Vav, that's the Einigal of Cham Seifa. He has a question. The Rambam says if someone's Mekal Atzma, he gets Malkus. Frag the Cyrus Tshuva, but if he's Mekal himself, he becomes an Eina Maisa Amcha. So Aibazai, he says, Gitte v'chatzer boyin ke'echad. He becomes a Rasha in the same second that he cursed himself. So why does he get Malkus? So he says, he thinks the Teres is Pashit because he's getting Malkus not for the Issa of Kallala, because there's no Issa Kallala by Rush. He's getting Malkus for the Issa of Mekal al Atzmai. So he's Mechavan to the Minchas Chinuch that I mentioned earlier. The Issa is not for the Kallala, the Issa is for the Mekal Ba'atzmai. But that gives meaning in, like we said, when we say things, even inadvertently, we shouldn't be nichshal in Mekal al Atzmai. Probably the most challenging question is cursing l'te'elis. L'mashal, someone's not listening to Bezdin. Does Bezdin have the right to give him a klala? So the emphasis, as I mentioned earlier, Chazal, Tanakh, Shas is replete with instances that people gave other people klalas. He was loitzayis l'dinei, there was a klala, there was a chayrim, we don't even say the word, we say ches v'chayrim. There's a concept of mishapara. I'll give you a mashal nifla. I don't know if even the Olam knows a little history. You look at haskamas that were written on Svarim 200 years ago, Be'erich, and further back. The bulk of the haskama was not about the greatness of the mechaba. You know what it was? Protecting the rights, the copyrights of the mechaba. I'll read you one lashon, just one punct of the Noid Yehuda. Ha'oiv al devreinu pirates gedi yishchenu nachash ulamakose la'yiyah trufa v'ya levoiz ulakoloin v'cherpa. The Heilige Yehuda wrote that as an askama. The Aruch HaShulchan in Tav Chav Beis Chayish Mishpat Siv Gimel writes, if he doesn't listen to Bezdin, you'll have to be Moisa Dino L'Shamayim. Now we know Moisa and Shamayim Hu Nenesh Tchila. So there's something very, very important about maintaining a certain control, a certain law and order. So Avada and Mishapara was a curse. But bigger curse if you don't listen to Bezdin. Sometimes there's a person's Masarif to come to Din. So what do? There has to be some type of control. So I saw a beautiful shtickle from Rabbi Chonan in Kavod Sa'ara Siman Ayin. He says a klal, which you see repeatedly, the more you learn, the more you see the klal. And min adam l'chaveroi, not everything is always awesome. It depends how it's used. And he gives kal achiyad so many mishalim. There's an issa of leisis nechicha b'vavecha, but you're allowed to hate a Rasha. You can't be chayvel someone, but you're allowed to hit a bezin, is allowed to hit malchus, and a father is allowed to hit child, at least before America. But you're allowed to hit a child. Alman of yasam leisanon, but letzayrich is mutter. Lashon hara is awesome, but te'elis is mutter. Aynas devarim, halbanas panim, is asa, but mutter letzayrich. And his last mashal, umutter gam lekalai b'shvil zeh, כמי שעשו כל הנביאים בישראל, ומוכי מכל זה, דכל איסורים האלו הותשו לצורך טיילס. In other words, avad the klala is terrible. But the same Torah that asked it klala permitted it l'tzorech. But of course, the big question, we say maslin 10 times, is make sure it's a legitimate tzorech. Don't forget the very wise advice of Sefer Chassidim Siman Ayin Vav. Don't curse another Yid. Don't be Moisedin another Yid, because he gets first punishment, and then he says, and I quote the Lashon, because if someone's Moisedin, the Rashim says, you're causing me to punish him, I'm going to punish you. Klali shel dav al tekalo shum adam ki pamim rabbis haklalais chayzrais v'chalais kulai al roishai v'al zarai. And his raya is David cursed Yoav, and all the calls came back to David. Because don't forget, one of the pshatim in Kilas Chinam, loy savay, the Gemara darshins, loy with a vav. It comes back to the person. So avada b'derech klal, there is a heta, but don't forget that, make sure that there really is a heta. But one final point I think is important to mention, that the point is the koyach of words are just, sometimes unfathomable. You know, imagine a person got a license to have a gun, but he was a person that did things right, he got a machine gun. But he didn't know how to use it. So he went in the street and he was showing it, and he held up show, and he shot and killed 37 people. So they throw him into jail. He comes to the judge, and Mama, she's crying. He says, Judge, why are you doing this to me? I didn't mean it. It's not my fault. I don't know how to use the gun. He goes, that's why I'm putting you in jail for life. You have something as potent and dangerous as a gun. You don't know how to use it. This is really the point of the sugya. It's we have to realize and never forget the koyach of lashon. But we like to always be more positive. You know, the midah toiv of it, when someone watches his words, the way he learns, the way he talks with people. So he has a halachic lashon, and that's the bracha of lashon. You know, Rabbi Moshe Aaron Stern quotes, he has the Kabbalah, a ma'aseh about someone, an old yid. He was very old and very sick. He refused to go to the doctor. So the family begged him, you know, you have to go to the doctor. Rabbi goes, I am not going to the doctor. I know I'm going to live long, because when I was a little child, I davened in the goyin's clothes. That was the shtibel of the goyin. And once I didn't realize, but I was standing on his tzitzis. I was on the ground and I was stepping on it. So the goyin, these are the words that we have at Kabbalah. The goyin told his child, "Lang leben sollst du mein Jingel, na rob die Fuß für mein tzitzis." And he should live a long time, but I have to go. Please give me my talis. And the goyin said that, and I'm going to live a long time. And he lived la'orech yamim. So I said this with Rabbin. Someone said he knows a yid. He knew a yid in Melbourne, Australia. A yid that was mamish in his 90s and so active. And he said, why? Because when he was once a young child, he helped the Chavetz Chaim down when he got a bracha by a chuppah. He helped him down from the stage. And the Chavetz Chaim says, Yingel's leben, alang leben. Now, this is the koyach of lashon. I don't know if the goyin, probably the goyin said it, he meant it, but just like there's a klas chinam, there's a birchas chinam. To quote the Kovet Shur Meksubas Samach Beis, we find the concept of brachas and klalas. But how does it work? כשגגה היוצה מפי השליט. The Gemara says in famous story, he said something, he didn't mean it, but it never had a klala. So Rabbi Chanan says, you see from here that there's a koyach of diba, of a pekadosh, that poils beteva, without kavana. L'toiv or chilul l'mutav. Just like a garrison does damage whether you have kavana or not, words have an effect whether you do kavana or not. He says, but an average person, because he's not careful with his lashon, he blunts it, he dulls the sharpness. But a true Talmud Chacham, his lashon is so powerful. It has an effect l'toiv l'mutav. And that's mamish devar. The Halakha Kedusha Levi used to say, La yachel devar, if someone doesn't profane his words, k'chol hayotzim bipiv yaseh. I'll leave you with a story. It happened to my family, my shver, Shiva from Stolen. He had his mother once went to Rabbi Yankov Kamenetsky. They were very close. The families were very close, and she asked for a bracha. Varichas yom. So Rabbi Yankov says, the leben meine Jahren. Now this Baba I knew very well. I remember when it happened. She was very sick, and she was not yet Rabbi Yankov's age. Rabbi Yankov passed away a few years earlier, and the family were very worried because the doctor said there's no hope for tomorrow. She lived a few weeks shaloike derech hateva. After she lived a little longer than Rabbi Yankov, she passed away. But it was lapel. They don't know how she lived so many weeks in such a condition. So one of my cousins, and also Enikel, he said he couldn't be soivelous. He didn't like these mice. He said, mice. So he went to him and told him the story. He says, I don't know, I don't believe in mice, but how could he said those to lev my yarn? So I said, it's not a meifus. If someone watches his words and is careful with his words, so it's going to happen. I don't know if he said the pasuk, but that's the layachal devar chol yotzei piv yaseh. It was tremendous chizik that the family saw. We saw it. A word has a gavaldige koyach. If we watch words, we'll be zoichet to see the Chaim Bialosh. I'm going to talk to you. Listen.
Shame issur I'd like to give a big ashikach to Smith for today's share. We'd also like to give a big ashikach to Simcha Cohen for partially sponsoring today's share. The Nishmas Imoy, Rachel Bashav Nochem Alevila, Shalom Yerkov was based Shvat and exposed to B'tzara Chaim to have a great exclusive sponsoring the share. Call issur 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshiva.com. After Kaddish, we're supposed to say a seeking by the Shem. Chananya ben Akashim, Rotzagosh Bogle Zakes, is Yisrael Figure Heaven Torah Mitzvah, Shanam Alo Noy Chofetz, Amad Tzidkoi, Yagdol Torah V'Yader. Everyone came and listening to the shir should be gebenched, and whoever stays for the sikim should have an extra bracha.
Okay, just let's chaz what we learned today. First of all, as we see, it's very negay. This is the 5 Issurim is a sugi for itself, but Pashat, the 50 plus Gemaras about the Is of Kallala. Basically, there could be other Issurim in Birav Mechaveri, but the Kallala is the Ichul Ara. Talk is not harmless. Words, talk is very meaningful. The Rambam learns that the Is of Kallala is a person should control himself and not respond, not to take nekama, control oneself, and then a person is able to deal with these situations. The Chinuch learns Kipshuta, it's a dibur hamazik. It's just like breaking someone's window. Words can do damage, maybe more than physical damage. Avada Chacham has more of a power with his words, but even Kilas Hedjit is effective. The Issa is lav dafka, life or death type of klala. Any ichul l'ra, any telling, wishing, expressing a desire to see bad is an Issa deraisa. The Issa of deraisa is lav dafka shem Hashem. Any bad wish is definitely deraisa. Question if there's malchus or not, but a curse, what we call it a curse, is any bad wishing that something should happen. More important for parents to be mechanech children in not reacting. It's important to tell them when you're angry, control yourself, you'll be better off. The Issa is even shaloi b'fanav. The Issa is for the mekalel. Some is more than the mekulal. By machshava, there is no Issa of klala. Ksiva would be a suffix. Deraisa, there's an Issa. Mekalal atzmoi is oiva mishmar nafshecha, not out klala. When we learn Masechta Yavamis or Shchita or anything, we have to be careful not to show on ourselves, talk about ourselves. Don't forget the bris crucilis fasayim, כשגגה היוצה pi השליט, al tiftach pel לשטן. Chazal explained, Nochem ish Gamza was allowed to curse himself because there was a need for kapara, be'einav al kaponim. Tidvak l'shayni is David's kapara. Rishus doesn't help for klala. Mekala group of is worse. Klala of a guy is muta. Kallala of a mace seems is definitely us. The question is the Raisa, the Rabbanan. A Rasha Mahudar, there probably is no Issa to curse, but anybody else, let's treat it like a suffix and not use words that give the Baruch Shloim Tsar. Saying Yemach Shemai about a Yid should not be said. I forgot to mention Shem Rishayim Yirkov is said after Misa, and it's not necessarily that he should, not a klala, just that his name should be erased, should be rotten and not used. Some are more maker with that for some reason, but afro lepume should not be used. The ikka is control, like Yosef, Yaakov with Yosef, a tremendous insight. There is a het of te'eles, but make sure that it's a proper te'eles. The koyach hadibur, Rabbi Chanan in Ksubas Samach Beis explains, is a reality, is a physical koyach. If we use it right, we can have the benefit of that, of the dibur.